Hey YouTube, thought I'd take a little time today and put together a review. This is one that's been requested multiple times. This is one of the fragrances that my wife and I picked up, I think August of last year. And since then, obviously after videos showing that we've got it, we had multiple people request that we get this particular review put together, that I get this particular review put together. Which makes sense because honestly this is one that I really haven't heard many people talk about, actually if anybody, and one that I don't think there are many reviews on, if any. I mean maybe there's one or two out there, but I don't know that I've ever found one. So without further ado, the fragrance I'm going to be reviewing today is a Montale fragrance. It's Montale Santal wood. And this is the only Montale fragrance that my wife and I own. We've been to Vegas several times, and there is a fragrance shop, well, a cosmetic shop inside the Cosmopolitan called Skin 62, and they have several Montale fragrances, several. And so I've smelled a number of them, but this is the only one that I liked enough to really pull the trigger on. My wife and I, we got a sample of black oud at one point, and we both kind of tried it out. It was pretty decent stuff, and tried red oud, and like I said, a number of other Montale fragrances at Skin 62, but this was the only one that, once again, we liked enough to actually buy. To get into it just a little bit, talk a little bit about the fragrance. This particular fragrance was launched not too long ago. It's back in 2012, and classified as an oriental woody unisex, which is definitely true. Both my wife and I wear this, and I think we both pull it off just fine. As far as notes are concerned, according to Fragrantica, not a very complicated note breakdown, not very complex. Of course, they don't necessarily always know what's actually in there. This is probably, times people just making their best guess. But they're assuming top notes of seawater and juniper, middle note is sandalwood, and base note is oak moss. So 4 notes total is all they're really, deciphering from this particular fragrance, or discerning from this particular fragrance. And I'm going to agree with them that it doesn't smell very complicated. It doesn't smell like there are a ton of notes in here. And really, I don't even get all 4 of those notes. What I get is definitely the seawater vibe with a nice sandalwood note. And that's not a bad thing. Actually, it's pretty darn nice. So really, what this makes me think of at times, especially when I smell it in the air, rather than smelling it kind of coming off of myself, like if my wife wears it, or you smell some sillage in the air. This is what Melissum Imperial would probably smell like if it didn't have the fruity note, the melon note, but had a nice sandalwood note instead. Also, recently enough, my wife and I we were at the mall, and we were in Sephora, and I picked up a bottle of Bulgari Aqua Marine, and I've never tried that on skin before. I sprayed some on paper, I smelled it on paper, and it definitely smelled like the seawater vibe from this particular fragrance. So, yet another comparison, if you will. This would be probably a lot like Aqua Marine, at least on paper, with a nice sandalwood note added to it. Now, some of you might think that sandalwood would be kind of an odd choice to add to, what would otherwise seem like a really fresh, summery fragrance. And by the way, the sandalwood has many characteristics, and really there are different kinds of sandalwood, right? And some sandalwood is more like what you get from the fragrance Sacred Wood by Killian. That one is much more of a smooth, milky sandalwood. And then there is much more of a harsh woody characteristic to sandalwood, and maybe that's just a completely different sandalwood altogether, right? Maybe some are just more harsh and woody, some are more creamy and smooth. This is definitely more on the creamy smooth side. This is not on the harsh woody side. So think of just a really, really nice sea-watery vibe. Very similar to what you get from Elysium Imperial. In fact, so similar that at times when I smell it in the air, when I'm not wearing it personally, it takes me a little time to realize what I'm smelling, because it does kind of smell Elysium Imperial like, when I'm smelling it that way. So really nice stuff. Really nice stuff, actually. As far as when you would wear this and performance and things of that nature, I think you can wear this all the time. As David would say, Vivaldi fragrance. I think you're going to be able to pull this off just about any time. Some of you might be a little hesitant to wear, a fresher, more seawatery, aquatic-like fragrance in a dressed-up situation, a more formal setting. I don't know that you're going to have a problem with this, because you've got the sandalwood note adding some backbone and kind of balancing it out a little bit. It doesn't just smell like a fresh citrusy aquatic fragrance by any means. It's more interesting than that is probably a good way to put it. And once again, the sandalwood is actually adding some backbone to it. The performance is phenomenal. I mean, for any of you that have sampled or smelled Montale fragrances, that's probably pretty typical for Montale. Things that tend to last pretty long, project pretty well, decent sillage. I think you can expect that more or less from this fragrance as well. It tends to do pretty well. And as I'm looking at Fragrantica, for the people who have actually weighed in, it looks like generally they feel like longevity is moderate to long lasting, and that sillage is somewhere between moderate to enormous. So it's really good stuff, and it definitely has the backbone and the power, the performance, if you will, to, I think, be just fine for the colder months. Also, I think you'd be just fine pulling this off in the winter. Definitely in the spring and the fall. And then today, I'm actually wearing this particular fragrance today, and it's probably around 100 degrees right now, just outside of Salt Lake. So a really hot day. Of course, I'm inside. It's air conditioned, but I mean, I had it on, and there were some periods where I was actually outside, and I'm fine. I mean, honestly, it wasn't too much. It wasn't cloying. It wasn't overpowering. It wasn't unpleasant. It's nice stuff. So I think you're going to be fine in the summer. I definitely think you're going to be fine in the colder months, because it's got the complexity, the backbone, the heaviness, the thickness, the performance. So like I said, I really feel like David would probably call this one a Vivaldi. Maybe wrong, but that's where I'm weighing in on this particular fragrance. And very pleasant. Interesting thing to note. So Montales can be a little challenging. I don't think that all Montales try and be generally pleasing by any means. Especially the ones that have oud in them. The oud that they've got, the oud that they tend to showcase in their fragrances, tends to be pretty medicinal in its qualities and its characteristics. I don't know if you refer to that as camphorous. I may be wrong, but it definitely has a medicinal quality to it, which I think is going to be odd, strange, and off-putting to some, a little bit more polarizing. This particular fragrance is not odd. It's not off-putting. I don't see it being polarizing at all. I actually see it being just a very, very pleasant, generally appealing fragrance, but still something that you're not going to smell on everybody, something that you're not going to be able to just go find at Sephora or Macy's or Nordstrom or wherever. So really good stuff, really versatile, great performance, very pleasant. And the nice thing, as far as niche is concerned, I probably paid about $170 for this bottle, but it's 100 milliliters. And you can easily spend $170 on something that's 30 or 50 milliliters when you're talking niche. So to get 100, that's great. I think that's fantastic. So good bang for the buck, solid fragrance. Love to know your thoughts below if this is something that you've smelled before. Like I said, I haven't really seen many, if any, comments on this, other than, probably looked at some on Fragrantica, but I mean within the YouTube community. And also, I don't think I've ever seen a review on this before. There might be one or two out there, but I don't think I was able to find one. Great stuff, worth looking into. If you like Montales, this is a really great Montale. And thanks for tuning in.